good, sorry. Glad to see everybody made it out. All 500 of y'all. Standing room only. Give yourselves a hand for making it out. But let's get right to it. Formalities, Anuki Marsal, Msoᴛᴜᴜ Tᴇᴇ, student teacher of the master teacher, Tğᴇ Dᴜɪs. Our warner sent for us in this day and time. Every race was sent a warner. Nobody would be able to say they didn't know. Nobody of any species or race cannot say that one wasn't sent to them that taught them what was best for them. That's the issues that you have in Asia, where a lot of straight Mongoloid Chinese, they have a problem with the Buddhists, because they say, yeah, he's not one of us. Why should we listen to him and he's not one of us? You're bringing that stuff that's not ours into our stuff. And every race kind of sticks to that. They had a rally, they had a Klan rally here at the state capitol recently in Georgia. Came out strong. And they have a right to do that. They have a right to declare what's right for them. Our warning in this day and time came for us to tell us what's right and what's best for us. And that would be none other than Tğᴇ D쏘ýs, who the world may know as Dr. Malachi York, or Zk. But let's get right to it. Being the master teacher that he is, the Razak, or the Murzakun that he is, the provider that he is, he's speaking us once more. So this is a lesson about the days of mankind from their overlords, the Anapu. And for clarity, it's a simple jewel, but for the new people that are new to the information, mankind does not mean all humans. It's right there in front of you. It's that kind of man. You start getting to the semantics or the binomial nomenclature of how they structured the English language. You know that man is homo and this kind of thing like that. It's homo sapien, homo erectus, genus homo, stuff like that. So you have to look into the definition of words that appear to be obvious in English, but they're not. You got to go to the root of it. So mankind does not mean everybody, and it don't mean us. We weren't man. They were. A kind of man on top of that. So this is a lesson about the days of mankind from their overlords, the Anapu, the Anunnaki, the Anakim. Likum Khradu Empanataru Ta Nawaku. For you, children of the Nathar, Natiru, the Nawapians. Much has been hidden over the past 6,000 years. And after the great crash, when the planet was split into two parts, the one half was to become terraformed. Terraformed by the Anapu, the Anunna, the Anakim, the Anunnaki, responsible for this crash. The event as recorded and given record. If you go to Jeremiah chapter 4, verses 23 to 28, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens were fled. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord, and by his fierce anger. For thus hath the Lord said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet will I not make a full end. For this shall the earth mourn, and the heavens above black, because I have spoken it, I have purposed it. I will not repent, neither will I turn back from it. Sounds like the Lord was pretty angry. 50 scientists who were selected to repair the Qᴏ planet. 25 males and 25 females from the Dᴏɪr, which was ruled by An, called Anu, the highest one, who chose his own son Ea to oversee this project. He was given the title Nut-im-Mud, and the 50 scientists were dispatched from the Dᴏɪr, the mother plane craft, from Orion's school for foreigners of many star systems. There to master the nature of the healed planet they called Eridu. That was to be terraformed and to bring the solid from the deep waters. 50 scientists in all, the females headed by Nin-Mah, half-sister of Ea, Enki. She became Nin-Harsag and later Nin-Ti. He became Nut-im-Mud and later Enki. He was given a smaller craft as the first to depart Al-Dabar, or Aldebaran. His pilot was Kula, his first lieutenant. Their first stop off was Sirius. Then across the stone-filled Milky Way to Lahma, known as Mars. Next on to the dark side of the moon called Kingu. And finally on to Eridu, or Qi, also called Tiamat. He Ea, which means he who is of the abode of water, as his mother Nimul, by his father Anu, was reptilian of Alelu's family. His sister, in fact. So Ea, or Enki, was half reptilian and could live on land and in the deep waters. His kabad, craft, came near the deep waters His kabad, or craft, came near the deep water that covered the planet to cool it. And he, Enki, as master of Ki, earth, hovered, as you find in earth's record, Genesis 1:2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the waters. The title given in time was El, of the Elohim, or Enki, of the Anunnaki. Once they all arrived on earth after he terraformed it, Genesis 1:3-19. He lived beneath the deep before he came. We lived beneath the deep before he came, as we lived here before the planet was split up into two. We watched him from beneath the waters, as he terraformed, or brought forth dry land, the planet, for others to arrive in a cylinder craft, 30 feet by 15 feet, each containing 10 in all. Each containing 10 of them, except for one which had 9 passengers, for Enki had already come. You see, once the planet was terraformed, 200 others were allowed to follow them. Ailelu was already on Ki in South America. He built the great city, later called Pumapunku, where he bred humans and alien species until Ailelu received word of Enki's landing, who he could speak with to seek forgiveness for his acts on Nibiru against Anu, as Ailelu tried to kill Anu and take his rulership. When this failed, and by way of votes of the council, Ailelu was to be killed himself. So Ailelu and his family departed Nibiru for Lahma, or Mars, on to Kingu, the satellite moon structure, then Tiamat, or Earth, to live beneath the waters. He finally met with Enki in South America as a deity, before all those he had created and bred. He made an offering to Enki, his own daughter, Dam-Pi-Na, who Enki later renamed Nin-Pi when he accepted her. In turn, Enki was to speak on behalf of Ailelu before Anu and the councils on Nibiru to make peace. Enki spoke of all the gold Ailelu found on Ki, and all the building of Atlantis, and Pumapunku, and other cities and species created. So Anu and his other son, Enlil, who was also called Nu-Im-Nar, came down to earth to visit and to see all that Ailelu had done. Yet he sent Enki to ask his new father-in-law, who gave him the right to play the deity, and do these things out of jealousy. So Anu, who listened to Enlil's jealous advice, disagreed with Ailelu's works and ego. Enki became angry with his half-brother Enlil for this, and a war broke out upon which Pumapunku was destroyed. Ailelu with his family departed Tiamat, Earth, to return to Lahma, or Mars. There he stayed and built colonies and later died. The conflicts between Enlil, master of the heavens, and Enki, master of earth, was from then on known as the conflict of the gods. Each claimed both heaven and earth as their own, and as the one and only true God. Nuwapians, let no one fool you about the dates and the times. They did not use zeros back then. No ciphers, which means the number 10 could have been 100, or 1,000, or 10,000. So don't be fooled by dated numbers. They don't know and will lie to pretend they do. Always remember this conflict of their gods, how it affects your life and learning. Most of what they have taught over the last 6,000 years from 4,000 BCE is lies, to hide their true making and their unnatural nature. They were recorded in their records as created in Genesis 1:26, then upgraded in Genesis 2:7, and then cloned in Genesis 2:21. Sometime later, others came down to Tiamat, or Earth, called the Igigi, Enlil's followers. They called in their records the Nephalu, or the Nephilim, the giants, or the fallen ones. Genesis 6:4 was in fact children of the Anunnaki, called the sons of God, Genesis 6:1-3. They came and watched the humanoids enjoying each other physically, and they became aroused. Genesis 6:21, 1 Enoch 6:7-8. It was 200 that came down and raped the humanoid women. 1 Enoch chapter 7, 1-10. 1 Enoch chapter 9, 5-14. As well as the book of Jubilees, 4:15, and Jubilees 5, 1-10. So these Igigi, or Iri, or Air, called Nephalu, Nephilim, giants, or fallen ones, are translated as giants because the first earth humanoids were females, 4 feet 5 inches, and males 5 feet 4 inches. And these Nephalu beings were 7 to 9 feet tall, so the humanoids saw them as giants on the earth in those days. The creatures, they, the Elohim, the Alihat, the Anakim, or the Anaku, Anunnaki, made by way of their own DNA, was called Adamites. They came out like them in their image, but also like Igigi, or the Elohim, in nature. as you read in Genesis 4 through 5, wickedness and evil. The Anaku, the Anunnaki, were very sad. The Igigi mixed with these Enosites of the Adamites and birthed this Mdwawu Salah, this evil race of blush, reddish, ruddy, pink, pale race of the Kakasu. As you read in Genesis 6:6, this Lord, Yahweh, was Enlil. For what his children did on earth, again without consulting him, or his father El Elyon, the Most High El, or An, or Anu. They wanted to destroy the Adamites, the Canaanites, the Sethites, and the Enosites in that part of Tiamat earth, Mesopotamia. They wanted to drown them all, yet Enki stepped in to save one family because they had a leader, Z'Usudra, Noah, who had pure genes. Going to Genesis 6:9 through 11, Z'Usudra, Noah, was with Enki and his own family, not Enlil, Genesis 6:12 through 22. So you had Enlil and Enki both speak of the removal of humankind in that part of the Kawak or the planet. But Enki had a plan to save Z'Usudra and his family, Noah, Genesis 6:18 through 22, because he obeyed these Elohim or these gods. There, Kabad or craft landed in what is called Turkey today and moved afterwards to Lebanon, originally named after Lebanon. That's after Mount Tech. Which is the original name of Canaan, the fourth son of Ham, Genesis 9:18. This son, Canaan, is pointed out here from his brothers because he was born an albino of Ham's actions and was later cursed with leprosy, Genesis 9, verse 25. The father of the Anu, or the Canaanites, the Caucasoids, second seed, the race from reddish to pale white lepers. Leviticus 13:1 through 59, which describe what they transformed into from ruddy or red. Leviticus 13:2. You see Adam for the word man, which translates as ruddy, according to Hebrew Strong's number 120. Then white and yellow thin fur from black nappy hair. Leviticus 13:10 and Leviticus 13:30. And spots and freckles. Leviticus 13:38. They are unclean. He is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priests shall pronounce him utterly unclean. His plague is in his head. King James translation. Don't mix or marry with the Canaanites. Genesis 24:3, Genesis 28:1. But the Hebrew Israelites did not obey that. They did mix their seed, and then spread their diseased seed with all others world over. Then, after the gates opened by wickedness, taught to them by the Igigi, the Iriim, sorcerers, these beings came to earth by the thousands, as you read in Psalm 68:14 through 18. They became known as the cherubim, and their leaders were cherub. Psalms 18:4 through 10, Ezekiel 28:13. He is the Yahweh of the Elohim, or the cherubim, Genesis 3:22. He gave them 6,000 years to rule earth and creatures, Genesis 1:26 through 28. Gives them the genetic knowledge on how to open up and operate. He gave them genetic knowledge on how to open up and operate on humans and animals. Genesis 2:21 through 22. How to cut open flesh, change, alter, clone, craft creatures into hybrids, or many kinds. Even plants and fruits genetically altered. You know who may ask, why did they give them such powers? It was to perfect their being. That is before much corruption. Mankind lived a long life like their makers did. In Genesis 5:1 through 32, note how long Adamites lived. Noah was the last because he was perfect in genes and generation, Genesis 6:9. All the seeds after did not live as long. And the Anunnaki gave them implants, like radios in their head, so that they can give them inner vision to create things or invent. But as their DNA weakened by the disease of Baras or leprosy, the curse of Canaan, they were cut off, and their original soul, or Ruach, in Genesis 1:2, Hebrew Strong's number 7307, was cut off. They lost their souls. Their makers wanted them perfect again, as they saw themselves on their image after their likeness, Genesis 1:26, to become perfect again. Or to become Elohim, gods again, as Adam and Eve did. Genesis 3:5, as they did live a long time and did not die that day. Genesis 3:22 and 2:17. They were Elohim, but they fell from grace and became forgetful. Genesis 4:25, the Enos, the Enas, the forgetful mortal, and had to call outside of his head for help from Yahweh. Genesis 4:26. No longer an Elohim, but a mortal. Enos forgot his true past and his link. Enlil and his sons, Nanar and Ninurta, one of them perfected again as Elohim, being they did not destroy them all. So they would live longer to serve him and his father Anu. They gave them a set date of life, and they taught them genetics to mix and to breed with the Nagaru, the Dᴏᴜ, and the Mangalu, to perfect their beings and their bodies, to become an Elohim again. They were to test until they could live up to 120 years. If they accomplished that, they would get transported, as did the one they tested on, called in their records Moshe, Moses, Musa, Exodus 7:1. He was made from a mortal to an Elohim. Then when it became time for him to die like a man, according to Psalms 82:1, which was repeated by Jesus in John 10:34, he was sanctified, Kodesh, Adus. He was made holy and pure, and El of the Elohim. So Moses was transfigured, as was Elijah and Jesus, Matthew 7:1. Excuse me. All three did not die. Excuse me. All three did not die, but was taken up. They became... All three did not die, but was taken up. They became Emmanuel, Isaiah 7:14, and Matthew 1:23, meaning El, or God, is with us, and Elohim. And the age of one of them was 120 years, Genesis 6:3, to overpower his flesh. So you read of the example of Moses, Exodus 7:1, then Deuteronomy 34:5-7. They did not know what happened to Moses. They left him in the mountains of Moab. Exodus 7:1, and the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to the Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Deuteronomy 34:5-7. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, over against Beth Peor. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre till this day. And Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eye was not dim, nor his natural force abated. That's in the King James translation. And as you read Jude 1 verse 9, you will further see that they did not find the body of Moses. Jude chapter 1 verse 9. Yet Michael, the archangel, when contended with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, The Lord rebuke thee. He was 120 years old and had become an Elohim, transfigured. The example for all of them to seek to repair themselves, meaning the Caucasus. In the Quran, it is repeated many times, as in the Quran, shorted chapter now 103, originally the 13th chapter. You see in verse 3, the word as salihat, always mistranslated as righteousness, but the word's root is salah, or salaha, which means to repair. Page 311 of the Ilias Pocket Dictionary of English Arabic, as la repair, not righteous. So they also were once taught about perfecting or repairing their lives to live to be 120 years. And they would be taken up or offered everlasting life, life eternal, not die. Excuse me. I didn't want to teach you that, but I knew I would come up with the cookies. Had a good run. Did a few pages. Alright, Tẓ. I'm here. It's not Tağ. So they were once again taught about perfecting or repairing their lives to live to 120 years. And they would be taken up and offered everlasting life, life eternal. They would not die, as Jesus told them. He said he is from above in John 8:21. You will die, I will return above. Greek strong number 507. Anu, which is Anu. He told them his father was in Orion, which was heaven. There he said are many mansions or star systems, as you see on the star map with 7 brightest suns. As he said, and the Quran repeats, the 7 heavens. So they were given a chance to clean inside out and outside in. But they disobeyed, so they were marked 666, 6 etheric beings, after they failed in 1914 AD. Hitler was chosen to perfect their race after the 1914 failure by those of Aldebar or Aldebaran, but he fell too by 1943. To this day, they seek to upgrade their physical bodies by all kinds of genetic operations, as well as cloning and operations. Transplants, to live up to the age of 120. They were supposed to be cleaned inside and out, outside in. and genes perfected before the year 1914 AD. They got close, so they were granted an 86-year extension up until 2000 AD, no later than 2003, when all the councils returned. Yet more failure, so in 2000 AD, their time ended, and many were raptured or taken to be food. They were told they would return again, and in 2013 AD, the seed of Adam's son, Enos, and Nas, still did not succeed. Yet now they die much older than in the early 1900s, in which they died at the ages of 30 to 40. Now it's up to the ages of 70 to 90, the 70s to the 90s, but they still did not reach the perfection of 120 years. So he is no longer going to judge, Dean or Den, Hebrew Strong's number 1777. He is no longer going to judge them because of their love of the flesh, lust, and desire. Genesis 6:3. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. King James translation. They did not do as Moses or Jesus. They failed. And you, Nagaru, and the others who live their way of life will be taken just as they have. Revelations 19:16 through 21. Where? On to Nibiru, to become food. The great and dreadful day of the Lord. Revelations 21, 1 through 27. The honorable Elijah Muhammad has already come. Now Malachi is here with healing in his wings. Crafts. Malachi 4, 2 through 5. That's that one. Moving right to the update. Read it as it is. Hatep 1. After about 3 days of starvation or fasting, all the cells in your body will start to break down protein that releases the amino acids into the bloodstream. These amino acids are then converted into glucose by the liver. Your body starts to cannibalize itself by breaking down the fat in your body. Once that is gone, your body will break down the muscle mass. Yet because the brain is still in charge of your body and is concerned with survival, it is selective in which muscles are broken down. Further tests have been conducted that if you had to live in a cave and had nothing to eat, by, say, the 12th day, your brain, the pineal gland, would start to secrete a chemical that would cover your nerve endings and make them numb, and would make the ones around your stomach more sensitive and begin to hurt, which says, I am starving. So you focus on finding food. By day 24 of no food and water, your brain would tell you to eat your own arm because of natural nature and self-preservation. Yet it is not your natural nature to kill or to take a life. Now you may say, well, that is killing yourself. Yet you would die from the effects of starvation before you can eat yourself to death. When you are in this state, you actually begin to transform. The eyes become sunken in or appear enlarged. The teeth protrude more and the stomach becomes bloated. Now you may say, what causes this? Well, as mentioned previously, the angels ate meat. They are not the fat little baby-like cherub figurines you may have saw growing up. And if angels were babies, then where are their mothers? And there were many interventions or genetic manipulations by beings. For instance, the Adamites are a combination of porcine, which made them immune to the many diseases as they were working or digging in the earth. When you dig in the earth, bacteria is unearthed. They were also mixed with canine, so they would protect their women and children and what they unearthed. And simian, who are good workers with tools and very creative. You look at their top scientists, Aᴜᴜ, Albert Einstein, Charles Darwin. They all have an abundance of fur. That was 2. 3. Once the Anunnaki mixed with the daughters of Enos, this different carnivore gene, or men of renown, were born. These giants were wicked, Genesis chapter 6, verses 4, also mentioned in the book of Enoch, as they were eating flesh. So the gene to eat flesh is already mixed into this new being. What evil scientists have done is found a way to trigger this gene, this flesh-eating or zombie gene in the brain, which they will activate using colors and tones, and through music and television. This is why I cannot stress enough. It is so important to learn your language and your own tones. 4. So Adamites are a combination of the Homo porcine, Homo canine, and Homo simian, while we are from an intervention in our 24,000 genome. As mentioned before, this planet is Project 24. The circumference of the planet is 24,000 miles, 24 hours in a day, broken up into 2 periods of 12 called day and night. 5. Africa is going to eventually tell foreign invaders to go home, as they will acknowledge they are self-sufficient. Just as it is a reality that people are less religious. So now you see all these movies like The Son of God, or Nanar, Noah, and Jinn. They are targeting a certain group. On television, you have all these ghost shows, ghost stories, Haunted Highway, Ghost Hunters, Celebrity Ghosts, and the list goes on. It has come to a point where the members of gangs are no longer afraid to die. And when the police come into their neighborhoods, they are more likely to get shot than the gangs killing each other. And they will risk being killed rather than being arrested. So the plan now is to show that there is life after death and encourage the youth to want to leave. Yet, because their time is up, everything they scheme to do comes back in reverse on them. 6, they are slowly dismantling the Bible. Yet if you are not a part of one of the main branches of religions, you are considered a cult because you choose to follow natural nature. Divine rules, not their laws, which are to control you. Religion is unnatural nature. Rules from the Lawi, or the priests. These 23 chromosomes that existed before, they have no idea where they came from. Can be traced back to Eve, that has trickled down into the genes today. That's why, you remember some years back, there was a study where the placenta of women were collected and placed in a centrifuge that separated the white blood cells from the red blood cells and broke down the DNA. And they all had the same mitochondrial DNA, only found in women. 7, recently scientists are saying now that the only real sense is touch. Panabab Yanun has been teaching this to us for years. Panan Kawan Pasadak. That is the truth. Did I forget something? Oh, okay. Alright. Questions, comments, rereads? Oh, the cuss word.
Me?
Kata.
Me?
He's coming with the mic, man.
I'm just a little confused about the whole Adamite story and who they are and who the Elohim is and the Anunnaki and the Anakim and then Enki and then Lil and then 120 years and then Jesus and Moses. I mean, who are they? Were they the Adamites? Or, I mean, who was Noah? Was he an Adamite?
He was.
Is he with the ruddy
Yes.
skin? But I'm saying, Enki wanted to save him.
Right.
Okay, but
That has nothing to do with us.
I know, but I'm just saying. So, what's the difference? You said the Elohim is different from the Natharu,
Say it.
and the children of the Natharu are not the children of the Elohim.
Exactly.
Okay, and
So you figured it out as you say.
Yeah,
I see
I'm
the wheels
saying-
turning. You're like, okay, hold on. I got you.
But now Jesus and Moses, now these are biblical characters.
Right.
But I'm saying, what race were they?
They were still the red ruddy race. You got to remember, this is still Planet 24. This was still that ET planet.
Okay.
This was their planet. You got to remember if you go back, remember Doc said in a few lessons behind where he first introduced us, where he said the Adamites. If you looked at the Hebraic translation, you got the red, ruddy, pink blush race. And he was saying that that was them. What happened was, wow, I lost my track. Is that right?
The Anunnaki created.
Oh, Jesus and Moses.
Right.
So that's all of them. They were all out of that ruddy race. You got to remember the Aᴜᴅɪᴏ or the Pleiadians was being eaten by their overlords.
Right.
So there was still an effort to, on one side, Enlil, his 2 sons, were going to try to, because they didn't destroy them all, remember they were upset that those Agigi came down and bred with the daughters of Enos without clearance. So now they had transplanted their genes, which they considered to themselves as divine, into an experiment. So the plan, through a general consensus of Enki and Enlil, or the Agigi and the Dānir, was to wipe them all out in that area of Mesopotamia.
Right.
But Enki wanted to preserve one family because of their obedience,
Okay.
which was Ziosusra, or Noah's family. And then out of Noah's seed came Moses, Jesus. The plan was still, because, remember, I can reread it, but he said because they didn't manage to kill them all, because Enki saved a few, then let's see if we can go ahead and perfect them and get them back on course of the original schedule of their genes lasting 120 years. Because at this point they weren't.
Right, but I thought that was for us. Like, we were supposed to do
That had nothing to do with us.
120.
You now, and this was Doc was saying in a few lessons back, we have to completely detach. We have nothing to do with the Adamites. We have nothing to do with any of the genetic products or byproducts of the Anunnaki's experimentation. The most that happened was when they could not perfect themselves on their own, as is taught here tonight, Enlil educated them where you'll preserve your genes a little longer if you breed with the Nagaru,
Right.
the Dᴏᴜ, or the Mangalu, because on your own, your genes are too corrosive.
Right. So we are children of the Nagaru,
Say it.
and we have nothing to do with the Elohim and the Amorites.
No,
And
nothing to do
those
with the
whole
Elohim.
thing with the Bible stories and all that, that's them.
That's them.
Okay.
The entire story, that's all their story.
Okay.
And that's their record from when they began to record.
Right.
You gotta remember, a lot of that was kept religious
Right.
to keep them under control. Boom, they weren't supposed to even eat what the angels ate. When they talk about angels' food, yeah, I may have missed something. Hold on. I may have missed something. That was last week.
Okay. What was
Okay,
that?
that's why it's in my mind. The angel's food that was mentioned in Revelations, and Dr. lists the Hebrew Strong's word for that was meat. And
Okay.
it said that man was not to eat angel's food.
Oh.
So when the angels, the Elohim, the Alihad, the Anunnaki, or the Anakim, because the same beings, depending on who's talking, when they started that experiment with breeding the Adamite to work, they were the ones who worked mining the gold and Rafali and Manadata. You see what I'm saying? So that wasn't us.
And they wasn't supposed to eat meat?
They weren't supposed to eat meat, and that's an old Jew years ago. Doc said the moment they tasted it is when that veracity for it reawakened.
But we eat meat.
We're not supposed to.
Oh, okay.
We were told not to, and that's why Doc started that years ago. We give him pushback on that.
Right.
But he, a long time ago, said stop eating, stop consuming the blood,
Right.
stop consuming the flesh, because through the fact that they raped and bred in, you carry that trait as well. We carry the trait as well
Right.
to want to eat some meat. The
Right.
problem is we didn't know that when we bred with them, who carry the genes of their overlord, their craving for meat didn't just stop at chicken. It didn't just stop at
Right,
beef.
right.
It stopped at people.
People, right.
You know what I'm saying? So eventually, if we continue to behave like them and keep turning these things on within ourselves that unfortunately lies dormant, you will begin to behave like them. And anything behaving like them will be what? Wrapped up with it.
Right. I got it. How I had?
And took out that point.
That's it.
That's it.
You had addressed the question, my question kind of briefly when you said he that's being spoken of and say he gave them genetic knowledge, all of that to perfect themselves to at least live to 120, right?
Right.
So the he that you're referring to is in live.
That's in live.
Right? Now, my question would be...
And his two sons.
Right, and his two sons, they were the ones that said, okay, please give me this information, because to them their genes were divine, right?
Yeah, well, you gotta remember, they started the Adamite project for a purpose. One, to work, and B, as a food alternative.
Right.
So, if you prepare food, and you say, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and put this in one of these new machines that vacuum seal it and cut it, you put it in the freezer because it'll last that much longer than if you just use a regular Ziploc bag, you have an expectation that when I did this process, I'm going to be able to preserve this food in the freezer, months as opposed to weeks.
Right.
So according to their original plan, we breed you for work and as a food alternative, and we expect you to live 120 years by our original function for you. What was happening was they were dying. So then that's when the experimentation was taking place. They had to add the porcine because as they were digging and unearthing more bacteria that was not natural to them because they weren't from here, they were dying. So they had to put something in them that can endure the bacteria. And they had to, then if you go back to old lessons, the doc said when they started coming out of Cappadocia, they had to breed the homo canine in them so they could defend themselves from the beasts that was outside the caves. So there was something else waiting to eat them as soon as they came out. You get what I'm saying? So it was an ongoing experiment, and that's why the porcine, canine, and simian eventually had to be bred in them so that they can endure the bacteria that they started waddling in while doing the labor and the work. They had to defend themselves and their women so they could continue breeding on their own autonomously after the original experimentation, and then they had to be given the dexterity to continue to work. So that's where the porcine, simian, and all that came in, But you say that in the wrong environment. You don't care about dog. I know but it's far more. It had more purpose and more intellect behind it. But that was again all their story. So because the story went awry, the Adamites were bred. Out of the Adamites came the Enocytes because their genes are that bootleg, for lack of a better term. Even though the Anunnaki came, bred for this purpose, they were so weak. They just kept degenerating. And that's when they had to move them out of Cappadocia, move them to Patmos, the ones that survived, because that was the strongest of the weak genes. And then they could use them as a good base to try to upgrade. Remember Doc said once they upgraded them, they cloned the upgrade. And that's the one you see today that has endured and can live a little bit. Now he's living in his 70s and his 90s due to modern medicine. But on their own without it, without that technological input, and they were dying in at ages 30s and 40s. You get what I'm saying? So I know where he's going with it, but
Yeah, pretty much went the way I was going.
okay.
But then it says, okay, they'll upgrade, right? Few of them didn't make it to 120. The stipulation was, we want to upgrade you to live to 120,
Right.
reserve or whatever, food alternative or what have you, right? So then, when they do make it to 120, and then it said they will be transfigured or transported to have everlasting life, what was that? That's just a pitch to eat them or continue to control, clone them?
Yeah, that was still control.
Okay.
Okay, see, if I don't control you, you'll just rot away because of your natural nature.
Right.
So I'm gonna give you these religious bylaws and these rules to live by. Don't eat this, don't drink that. You have to bathe a certain way because you're disgusting, and if you don't, you get all these sores internally, externally. And if you do all these things, there's everlasting life for you. That was the pitch phrase, but the reality is, I just need you to comply so I can get my original purpose out of you.
Understood. Thank you.
So they were the ones that were cloned. They were cloned. The Adamites were cloned. So
They were cloned as well. The Natharu had to breed and groom us for our 24,000 genome experiment.
Okay,
So everybody was cloned. That's not the big issue. Everybody was coming down, putting a little 2 cents in
Right.
to the project. Yeah.
Okay. But we still have perfections, things that we have to do
Yeah.
in order to be considered Anunnaki.
No, we
I mean, not Anunnaki, I mean, Natharu.
tell you.
I meant to say Natharu.
Yeah, for us, you gotta remember when Doc started the mission statement, and this was before I was born.
Mhm.
When the elders, when y'all were the first ones he was teaching, he was saying it would be what? The children's children.
Right.
Which would have been, for some of y'all, I would have been your son,
Right.
then my children,
Right.
then their children.
Right.
That 4th generation of breeding, we
Right.
would have bred out the mixing.
Oh, right, okay.
You see what I'm saying? And then the little babies running around now
Yeah.
should have been the benefactors of our discipline and our effort.
Right.
But because we were slacking, we exploited every gray area, every crack in the system. You know, now you had the potency of Doc's plan became diluted. So now our last alternative is locking ourselves into the frequencies necessary to align with the glitch.
Mhm.
Because we miss every due date that he's given us. Because we still carrying so much bacteria. Remember Doc said, are you studying the DNA or the DNA chromosome studying you? You gotta remember, so we polluted ourselves and continue to, because remember your DNA is almost tacky in nature. Everything you expose it to, it retains a piece of. Every sound, every movie, every snack, every meal, every liquid, you see what I'm saying? It don't let it go. And we went to sleep and sobered up and wore off and went to work. But your DNA was like, you know, that NJ, I take that. That crown roll, I got that too. That white woman, got it. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, nobody knew, no harm, no foul. I was out, nobody caught me. And you back here chanting on Thursday. But your DNA said, nah, I'm telling you.
Okay, so I'm saying there's a way to clean the DNA, right?
Right.
And that's through the frequency. That's through the sound, tones out.
Doc said it's going to be through ritual.
Ritual.
Primarily, it's rooted in the language, and then we chant in our language.
Right.
So all of that helps to dial us in. He even said years ago, you know, I keyed in on it. He said, even for the mulattoes, he said, I can give you the tone and the pitch that will shatter all the Celtic DNA in your bloodline. So that's why I stay close.
Okay.
Right here, like. Hey, Doc, remember you said you made that tone that was... That's it.
You read earlier when you were talking about if you know, like if we didn't have something to eat and our body would be breaking something down.
Say it.
Would that be like when we're fasting and if you're not used to fasting and then you do start fasting and you don't eat anything and it seems like the middle of the day you start getting like a little shaky, maybe like butterflies. Is that like your mind saying you need something to eat because you're used to eating?
Yes, but you got to remember, the whole digestive process is all just 3 muscles that work in phase inside the body. So you have the muscles that work within a certain time frame for ingestion. Then you have the muscles that work within a certain time period of the day for digestion. Then you have the muscles that work at another period of the day for excretion. Okay, so what happens is you have committed those muscles to a memory of your eating habits. Muscle memory. So when you say for the first time at 35 years old, you know, get knowledge of self and stuff like that, I'm gonna start cutting out these foods and fast like this, your muscle's like, whoa, we normally would have stopped at McDonald's by now. So it's not that you're starving to death and you feel, you know, people like, I tried to fast, but I get too lightheaded. That's the parasites who literally have attached themselves to your entire nervous system, telling you Remember, Doc said, your craving for sweets is the sweets in you trying to survive. You get what I'm saying? So it's the things that, for lack of a better term, are parasitic and have latched onto you. They are dependent on you taking in these things, and they are very much used to you taking in these things at a certain time, or in certain intervals, or in certain quantities. So when you don't do that, you've been feeding these things that have been eating off of you all these years, and now you want to fast today, and they're like, whoa, you didn't invite us to that meeting. We didn't agree to fast. So they produce the chemicals that you feeling a little lightheaded. But remember, Doc broke down that process. You can go up to 24 days without food or water before your body really goes into extreme self-preservation. Excuse me, more so the brain. The brain will go into extreme self-preservation at that point and start deciding what we're going to shut off so we can live. You know, fingernails start falling off. I mean, these are things where they found people who've been marooned for months, and they find they have no fingernails, they don't have any hair. The teeth are starting to erode because the brain was like, the minerals that we used to let you have to keep fingernails and hair, I need that. You know, by day 14, you don't need fingernails. I need the minerals that was growing your fingernails. You know, so stuff like that, you know, so. And this is all part of the process why Doc's trying to tell us, cleanse, cleanse, cleanse. You got to get the parasites out, because half of your craving and your desires to eat this, drink that, do this is them. You get what I'm saying? Doc said it's those things trying to survive in you that make you crave and desire certain foods or chemicals. And the other side of that is going back to what Doc said, no matter how much you bathe or oil, put oil on, he said they can still smell the rot in our clothes. Now the other incentive to clean, so that's why they flee from us. It's like, I want to get down with you, I want to help you, but you stink. You know, it's like putting on dirty clothes. You know, we all desire to be utilized by those whole life beings and those etherians, but they like, deal. You know, this skin suit stinks. I don't want to wear that. So they sent us dietary laws, plenty of water, fast, then the tones, do things that it does on its level, and you know, you work the process and then we good. But a lot of that, bring it full circle, that's muscle memory. You've committed the muscular part of digestion, ingestion, digestion, excretion to a memory. Your muscles know, I should be eating this at this point. I should be doing this at this point. You know, and you stop that to fast, all these alarms go off. But really, you are right. Because that 3-day fast, because you're compacting bread, dairy, you know, the old when I was in school, if you couldn't afford Elmer's glue, they told you just bring white flour to school. You took that white flour, mixed it with water, and it formed what? Paste. Root word of pastries, cake, cookies, glue. So, pasta, paste. So, you have all this glue in you, holding all the meat in you, holding all the dairy in you, and then the body would need a whole lot of time to push that out, but before it can address that, you done ate another hoe. And you didn't work that cycle for so long, you're really excreting only a small percentage of what you're eating. So you have to fast, because if you don't put nothing new there, your body will break down what's already there and start getting at it. You know, so that's why. But I think it was to address, you know, some of us, the doc said fast, man, I'm on my 37th day. You know, we go crazy with it. The doc's like, look, all right, do that if you want to. Your brain gonna start taking over. But go ahead, sorry.
In the reading earlier, he was speaking on how the 144,000 was food for the gods and was going to go to a planet called Nibiru.
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's old doctrine and it was in the Sumerian period, but what is the update of it now? Because what we call the ship or the craft we have to go on when we have to leave this planet isn't Nibiru anymore.
Remember, that's the Hīnuat. They came down to Nibiru, on the Shams, and all that stuff. That was their thing, and the Khabad Act. Whereas for us, it's the Hīnuat, the Binuat, or your own transformation out of here. Remember Doc talked about years ago, he said, you yourself can become the vessel to make the move, but you may not be ready. He said, but your ring was pure. He said, so the ring gets snatched off and go through and you don't make it. You know, but so those are our options. But yeah, Biru, all that kind of stuff, that's over there with them. See, the best way, and to me, hindsight, and as a student teacher, you search the pearl, sometimes the best way, I may just want to, what did Doc say? He just wanted to tell us, Islam ain't the way to go. He came here in the when he began publishing in the 60s. And he wrote Bible Interpretation and Explanation in the introduction to the book. He said, this book will break the spell. And he dropped it. And Negroes in America read it and was like, Jesus, Allah, Yahweh. And he was like, no, see, this book is supposed to break that off you. We're like, I'm just trying to see how this book ties back into Jesus. I'm just trying to see how this book makes me a better, you know, how can it make me an imam? And as he said, okay, this book I got to pack away. And now I gotta submerge you in Islam, because if you read Bible Interpretation and Explanation, he destroyed all the monotheistic religions right there in the book. But because we didn't grasp it, he said, okay, we're gonna have to sit that to the side, and now I gotta submerge you in it until you're sick of it and see the flaws of it from the inside out. And that's what happened. You know, I keep waking you up for Fajr enough, you gonna get mad at Allah. Why? It don't even make sense. You supposed to pray at sunrise. Wait a minute, sun don't rise. Allah should have known that. Oh, then we start doing our own thing. So it took us all this time to catch up, and now we're ready to absorb what he can't get. The whole saying.
I have a question. Right.
That's it.
I was wondering, I know before she was saying that, well, the Adamites, they lived to be 120. So what is our life expected to be?
Remember, they were talking about literally that shell that became them, that body. If they worked it a certain way, you're crazy. If they worked it a certain way, that body, they could have kept that meaty, that flesh, good for 120 years. But remember, they lost, additionally to that, the ruach that Enki gave them. See what I'm saying? So they just became physical beings with no more life expectancy now than 120 years. We didn't lose our ba'a. We didn't lose our ka'a. We didn't lose our ah, though it was contained inside the fat, the body. We didn't. We turned these things over to them. Because remember, Doc said now, you have beings that only focus on absorption of energy. So they are extraterrestrials, you want to call aliens, that only function in the plane of force. They never even materialize to some reptilian or gray that we may be scared of. They literally just function over there. And they focus on affecting us on that planet. You get what I'm saying? So, and through the lights, the sounds, the foods, the chemicals, the environments that we voluntarily subject ourselves to because we can't stay away from them. We're submitting, we're opening ourselves up. Remember Doc said, you can drop to such a frequency because they can only come up so high. But you can drop low enough for them to catch it. Going back to that the 2-week Yoruba school we was in, and Doc said that's how the bembe's work. Because somebody starts with the heartbeat. Boom, boom. It's a low frequency drum. He said that's the one, then the other people start moving and dancing, sending those tones into the ground. Bringing our frequencies low enough where one of them down there can come as high as they can come and catch it. He said, then what happens? He said, then you get the brother that's nice with the gym. Well, first you get the one to hold the rhythm, because there's the bass. Boom, 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 boom. And somebody brings the frequency up, because the root word of frequency is frequent. How frequent the height or the valley of a frequency passes a certain point. You get what I'm saying? So you get boom with the heartbeat. If somebody comes in, you just do rhythm. Heartbeat still doing his thing. So he is raising the frequency up. The frequency of the stripes of that skin, because it has to be from something that once bled. You get what I'm saying? And then that one brother comes in, he brings it all the way up and literally bring those beings from where they couldn't come on their own through our own blood and brings them up into our world. And then you know you're sitting there and this guy breaks out dancing like a woman. No. And they say, who's that? Who claims his head? They'll say, give me ya. You see what I'm saying? Then you get this other guy who all of a sudden he want a gun, a fifth of Bacardi, and smoke cigarettes all day. And then they'll say, that's Ogun. You see what I'm saying? And then you get a guy, he's an ex-blood, so he's one of red all the time. And that's Sᴏᴜᴅ. You know, so and then it goes like that. You see what I'm saying? So, because they couldn't, and Doc broke down that those Yoruba deities didn't originate out of Nigeria, out of Ife-Ile. They were Arab, and the ancestors of the Pale Arabs, who migrated out of Iraq, out of Eridu, descendants of the Anunnaki, and brought that all the way into Nigeria. So, you know, we can have a debate if you want to. You know what I'm saying? That was just a quick trip. You know what I'm saying? But the point is, they need us to do that. So we can submit our souls to them, but we didn't lose ours as a whole. And the thought never left us. We left them. We stopped acknowledging them. I think I'll make this the last one.
So are you saying that it's wrong to keep it drum?
Not at all. The drum is part of our culture. Like when Yaya was here, Yaya used to check us on the drum. Because you get one brother, he grabs a djembe. Then another brother come in with the congas. Yaya learned the drums from Panabab, the proper way. There's a proper way. There's a way we're supposed to play the drum. We American, we just Negroes. We play it, but Doc said we don't even have soul when we play. Even when on Savior's Day, we was doing the Protector of the Night ceremony. Doc said, luckily, y'all don't have no real rhythm. Because there used to be people that came to the ceremonies and tried to do a mass possession. And they would be mad because we'd start losing it. You know, just when he was about to do his thing, you know. So, but we have to be taught that. You get what I'm saying? And that's all part of every incentive why we need to still bring him home. You get what I'm saying? Because you don't know the drum. You don't know familiar spirits just yet. We've been educated by it, but it would take that master teacher that to still hold your hand and guide you through that spiritual realm and let you know, don't touch that. You don't say that because he told you to say it. We just get on anything. And that's how Doc said so many little fringe groups was able to jump out of us. You know what I'm saying? Because he said, I gave y'all that short attention span. Before you can finish one book, I put 3 more out. Before you can absorb what I taught last Saturday, you came back with questions for that, and I bust your head this Saturday. And then they took it. And then that frequency of new information slowed down. So this bootleg fool over here comes up and says, I'm new. And you're like, that's new. Damn, did you hear that? That's new. And he said, we're addicted to new stuff. So this dude goes, yeah, well, I'm new boo. You're like, I'm gonna get this book, and I'm gonna get that new book, and they both got Tğıs in it, so it gotta be alright. You know what I'm saying? And before you know it, we out there. Follows. So, you know, he said, but I did that. He said, I gave y'all that with you, and this is why every week we're back here, and he's still doing what he needs to do to set the record straight. Because first, he literally was like, I ain't giving y'all nothing until you get me out. But because of the way we were, we was like, nigga, Harvard sounded pretty, all right. Church black Messiah, sound good to you? You know, and Doc said, be black. He said, we will be the Messiah. He was in a triad. Right? So Doc said, I literally had to go ahead and start giving y'all what I came to do to keep you here, keep us gathered. But we'll strike, you know?
Okay. Could you reread the updates, please?
It's late. It's late. It'll be on WoodaWop.com. But I know the sisters got the table, they got the thing in the back, and it's already 11 o'clock. I'll come sit with you and we'll read. On that note, family, it's always love. Let's put mission first. Remember, Father Bab needs to be free, because he can feed us all day. But without the master key to put it together, you're still going to be sitting here. You know. But on that level, don't forget we got food in the back too. So you done fed your mind, fed your soul, but put something in your gut. Don't feed them parasites. Watch out.